right, welcome back. The week you missed, it is May 6th. It was May Cinco de Mayo yesterday. It was May the 4th be with you the day before. A lot of fun days. It is a kind of nice day in Philly. It's a little gloomy, but I kind of like this weather. It's perfect for running, not too hot, not too cold. How you doing, Todd?
We're doing great down here. Probably warmer than it is up there, but a little gloomy down here too. So just straight chilling.
It sounds like you were repeating the weather, so I'm going to call you Retod for repeating the weather.
The people I was with this weekend, I told them about that.
Todd and Retod?
Like that. Well, how my brother and his dumb friends used to call me that as a kid, and they're like, "That's mean but clever," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's about the way that I see it now." So at the time, I didn't think it was so funny, but now I can laugh at it.
Yeah, I don't like that word usually. It's not a nice word, but it's a funny joke.
Todd is not a word; it's a nickname for me that has connotations that people might make.
Exactly. But let's get into it. What's the week we missed? I feel like it's like a 30 years that I missed. I'm not sure where this came from. I feel like I heard about it like 5 years ago. Like, oh, this is worrisome. We need to monitor this situation. But I really didn't think anything of it. And now all of a sudden, here we are. What am I talking about? Roe versus Wade might be overturned. That's crazy. It took me some time and I had to read into it to really understand like what that means. Because a lot of the stuff you hear about and you, at least for me, and I feel like I'm fairly smart, I'm fairly like involved or know what's going on. I still don't really understand the implications of a lot of these things. So Roe versus Wade basically made it so it's a federal protection of being able to get an abortion after I think like 22 to 24 weeks. So that's a federal protection, but that means that states, and I still might be wrong, so excuse me if I'm wrong. That means that states don't need to necessarily allow it, or do states have to allow it?
So the basic mechanics of Roe in terms of the trimester system was that in the first trimester, you can't really restrict it at all. In the second trimester, you can put regulations and restrictions on it. And in the third trimester, you can implement bans if you want to. I think that's about how it roughly breaks down, which actually, and it's interesting because that actually sort of breaks down to the way most Americans actually feel about abortion, which is that like in the first trimester, most people are like, yeah, it's fine. Like mistakes happen, these things happen, take a pill, you're all good. Second trimester, people get a little bit more like, man, it's a little weird. And then third trimester, people are like, well, isn't that basically a baby?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think an important distinguishing marker that I was reading about at least is, and there's like, I'm sure depending on who you talk to, there's different things, but if the baby or the fetus would be viable outside of the womb, then people consider it like a person. So like, can you extract that fetus from the womb, and will it live and survive outside of the womb? And if that's the case, then that's like technically a person. If not before, it's not a person. That's what some people say. Other people say if it has a heartbeat, that it's a person. And it has a heartbeat at, I think, like 6 weeks. Yeah. So that's super early. But I don't know. It kind of depends who it is. But it sounds like states have some right or some say in what happened, but they had to generally allow abortions. So now with the and then too, all of this is coming to light this week because something was leaked, it sounds like, and it does. We don't know for sure if this is actually even happening, but it looks like something was leaked that the justices are willing to overturn Roe versus Wade. So what will that mean? That means that states will then have the ability or the right to do whatever they want. I believe there's like 20 states that have laws banning abortion. I read like 7 of those states probably don't care. They just have laws that they never changed, but they probably won't like actually prosecute. But 13 of those states have what I read was called trigger laws, that right when Roe versus Wade is overturned, they are prosecuting and not allowing it. So this is obviously a big case. I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I feel like it seems like it's going to get overturned just the way things are going. I have read, I don't know, I guess one of the things that was most wild to me, and then I'll hear some thoughts from you, is some states said that if this was overturned, they also will have the right, and this is going to be argued, I'm sure, a lot, to ban medical tourism. So basically, if you're in Texas and Texas says no abortions are allowed, a lot of people will say, okay, I'll just drive up to Colorado where I can get it. Well, Texas is saying that they're going to actually have a law that makes it illegal to do so. And then people are saying, is that constitutionally allowed? And then other people are saying it actually is something that hasn't been too developed because it's so new. So that's going to be a whole new arena that people end up arguing over. So what do you think, Todd? I know I said a lot. What are you gravitating towards? What resonates with you?
I mean, so the thing that's annoying when any of this like Supreme Court stuff happens is that like everyone and their mother becomes a fucking constitutional scholar and most of them are complete idiots. I mean, look, the way our legal system and governance system works is you can pass sort of whatever laws you want, and then the court system shakes it out and says whether or not it's allowed to stand or not. So can Texas or other states ban people from traveling to get an abortion? Sure, but like, let's look at the facts. How enforceable would that be? If literally the only person who knows she is pregnant is the woman who then travels across state lines to get an abortion, there's no way to prosecute that person. Impossible. Now, yeah, if more people know and one person's upset and then they take a trip to, California and come back and they're not pregnant anymore, someone might put the pieces together and maybe someone tries to prosecute. But, generally speaking, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's fucking crazy. And I think that, realistically, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with this because the one thing that I've seen discussed a lot is that since Roe versus Wade basically cast this, the law of the land as being able to, have abortions everywhere, it allowed the people that were anti-abortion to sort of talk hypothetically about banning abortion completely because Roe would prevent them from doing that. And then on the other side, it let people talk about allowing abortion literally up to the minute of birth because they were talking about wanting to expand laws to be so liberal because they didn't really need to because women were allowed to get abortions within most reasonable timeframes. And so you had these two like ultra extreme ends that most Americans completely disagree with. Like if you look at the polling support for abortion based on trimester, I think it's something like 14 to 20% support abortion in the third trimester. Now, the way you hear people talking about it, you would think that, 50% of Americans think you should be able to abort a baby until the moment it's born. And that's just not true. And at the same time, the percent of people who want abortion completely banned or even restricted down to the first 20 weeks or 15 weeks is also very small. Right. So, if I'm thinking optimistically about this, it would be nice if what could happen was both sides of the aisle come together and say, you know what? Let's come up with some sort of compromise that neither of us are going to be super happy with, but that doesn't create a complete upheaval of our society. So maybe we end up setting it to say that, you can restrict abortion up to 20, after 20 weeks, it can be banned if your state wants to. But at the same time, every single state has to offer, free over-the-counter birth control or free IUDs in order to make it just as easy as possible for people to get birth control in order not to get pregnant.
Right.
I think some sort of compromise decision would be great. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the actual ruling comes down at. Because I think that's the thing that everyone forgets is that this was a leaked decision. This is not a final decision. This was from 3 months ago. All it would take, because I believe it was a 5-4 decision, and all it would take is one justice being like, well, maybe let's do something a little bit different here, and we could have it modified. The thing that I'm seeing is that, some people are saying, well, maybe if they end up just striking down Casey, which was the second case that is sort of less well known, but that sort of expanded and reinforced Roe. They strike down Casey, that would probably end up possibly allowing a law like the Mississippi law at the center of this case to stand, which banned abortion after 15 weeks. But yeah, I don't know. I think right now a lot of people are just going absolutely insane based off of something that we don't even know is true or not.
Right. Well, I guess here's my question too is it sounds like most people support abortion, at least in the first semester, and many up until a certain point. Why are we overturning Roe versus Wade then if the majority of people like don't seem to want that?
Because and Roe gets a lot of criticism from like a legalistic standpoint because it basically sort of created the right to an abortion out of sort of thin air. And I'm not saying I sort of agree or disagree with the legal analysis, but people that are like legal scholars and lawyers, when they break it down, they're like, yeah, they basically saw this issue and they found a way to say it's constitutional, you have a right to it. It's not necessarily rooted in like sort of strict constitutional analysis, so therefore it gets repealed. I don't necessarily like, I can understand the legal arguments for rolling it back and for undoing the precedent. I don't think it's the best idea. I don't think it's great. I think the current system is sort of basically working fine. But you know, from like a legalistic standpoint, I can understand the logic that they use to say we're going to undo this. But again, I don't think it's the right call, at least with what we saw currently. I think if they end up moderating it and saying that, look, states are allowed to ban abortion after 16 weeks if they so choose, or after 20 weeks if they so choose, like I'd be fine with that, because you know what, 4 to 5 months, that is a long enough period of time. Probably 99% of women would know they are pregnant. Like, I don't support Texas's law that's based on the heartbeat, because that's 6 weeks. Like, I've known people personally that didn't know they were pregnant until they were like 2 months in.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's fucked up.
Messed
The
up.
idea of not allowing a woman to get an abortion in a period of time where she very likely might not even know she's pregnant is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, definitely. I guess so little fun thing to end this part of the show. What do you think is the difference in percent of people, men versus women, who support abortion? So I'll ask that again because I don't know if that came out the best way. The amount of people who support abortion, men and women, do you think there is a big difference in the percent of people who support, or a little difference? And what do you think that?
I think men probably support at a slightly higher rate than women.
Really? Why do you think that?
Because a dirty little secret of the pro-choice movement is just how many women are pro-life. And they don't like to talk about that because it sort of blows up the narrative of it's all these white men who are trying to ban abortion. And it's like, well, there's a lot of women too. And there's a lot of women of color that are super religious that also don't like abortion.
Yeah,
that's true. Really inconvenient for the narrative. Like, look, you go into like a very Democrat, like Latino or Black community that's very religious, I guarantee you there's a lot of women there who do not support abortion ever.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point. So you were close, but it's 62% women support, 56% men.
I knew it was close.
I thought you were gonna say the men was higher because they don't want to pay child support.
Well, that too. Men are notoriously selfish.
Probably does play a factor into the support, honestly, unfortunately. But what do you have for us this week?
Oh man, you know, I think with everything that's been going on, and you know, I think this Ukrainian war is just grinding on, and I feel like obviously it's been completely supplanted by the Roe versus Wade debate. But yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get like a little bit freaked out by how much the U.S. government is sort of leaking and talking about how we are actively helping the Ukrainians. Like
we helped get the warship that Ukraine was able to blow up. We gave them all the information. Yeah,
we gave them a bunch of information to help them target a whole bunch of generals. And like, look, I mean, Putin is unstable. He has a bloodthirsty group of citizens and other people around him that are probably some of them pushing for, you know, more aggressive action. Because the thing that's messed up is that, you know, everyone looks at what's happening in Ukraine and it is disgusting. There are war crimes, there are atrocities, but frankly, Putin and the Russians have been restrained in many ways that it is not like a total war. They have not been targeting infrastructure as much as they could be, probably
Well,
because they thought they'd be taking over the
question,
country.
question there actually, because tomorrow there's rumors that he might declare war officially tomorrow. So we're not technically in a war yet. What does that mean? Does that change anything if they're in a war? Does that like change the rules?
I think it would allow them, and you're talking about Putin formally declaring war on Ukraine, right?
Yeah, they said he might do it tomorrow on May 7th.
I was heard here in May 9th because that's some like important date.
Yeah, May 9th, maybe that was it, yeah.
I've heard the same thing, that we're coming up on this possibility of them formally declaring war. I think from like a practical standpoint, I think it would allow them to like draft more people and like raise more troops to funnel in. It would also probably be a propaganda tool, because right now in Russia, I don't think they're supposed to talk about it as a war. It's
Right.
like conflict or military action or, one of those like bullshit euphemisms. So it might allow them to really sort of turn up the propaganda and really try to rally the country around it. But yeah, I think just that, these, like, I have no problem necessarily with America supporting Ukraine. I do think, I don't necessarily love how much money we're spending on it, because we have got a lot of things we could spend money on here. And a lot of people use $33 billion at home. But I think at this point we've skated along pretty nicely without any sort of real consequences to America. But Russia's got cyber terrorism capabilities. They have the ability to probably start, specifically targeting sites in Ukraine where they learn that Americans are, or starting to target American supply lines of us dropping off military equipment. Because, like, look, let's be real. Like, and I think I said this one of the last times we spoke. If the Russians know where Americans or other NATO countries are transporting materials into the country, if they slip and accidentally blow up a whole bunch of people that are maybe, 2 miles inside the border of Poland that are, transferring weapons to the Ukrainians, like, I have a hard time saying that that's not a legitimate military target. Now, obviously it would be outside the borders of Ukraine, but like, no one would bat an eye if Ukraine was like, yes, we struck inside of Russia, and because there was where they were amassing troops to come in here. Like
Right.
it would be a somewhat legitimate military target, and that would really sort of test NATO to say, okay, well, if you drop the bomb inside a NATO country, what are you going to do now? But because we can only go so far with playing proxy war before we might start sort of paying some consequences for it, or seeing them push and say, all right, you want to be part of this war? Let's get you to be part of this war. Let's show you to be part of a war.
What do you think's going to happen then?
I don't know. I mean, look, at this point, it wouldn't shock me if you saw Putin light off a low-grade nuclear weapon somewhere in Ukraine, just to basically say, we're done here. And if you keep doing this, we'll keep doing that. I don't know. I think he's trying to sort of create that land bridge between Crimea and Russia, which is where that city of Mariupol is, which would basically seal off Ukraine from the Black Sea, I believe, which would not be good. And look, I think no matter how this ends, unless the leadership of Russia drastically changes in some sort of coup, if it stays in the same type of regime, they'll be back again. This isn't over.
Yeah.
Like they will be back, and it will be very interesting to see how quickly, if this thing ends like on a somewhat like agreed upon or negotiated peace, in air quotes peace, how quickly Russia will be allowed back in to the international community.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Like, because all of these places, McDonald's and John Deere, left Russia, and it's like, if everything ends, are they all gonna just jump right back in? I'd imagine so. Or is it gonna take like years and years to build that back?
Look, and there's an argument to be made, because part of the reason that, one of the contributing factors to the rise of Hitler in World War II was that after World War I, Germany was completely humiliated. They were saddled with so much debt that their economy was destroyed. Like, they didn't have really even a chance to like be a real country following World War I. Like, all the sanctions and everything on them were just so crushing. And it's like, it obviously helped create a scenario that ended up with a much, much, much worse conflict, 20 years later. So, I think it's a complex question. And it's like, unless the goal is going to say we are literally going to wipe out Russia and we are going to glass the entire country with nuclear bombs, we need to figure out, okay, when this thing ends, how do we make it so that we start creating a relationship with Russia again, where ideally they don't want to do this again.
Right.
Because, and of course people will say, well, you can't appease these people and you have to, punch them in the nose until they stop. And like, okay, great, but that's not realistic. That's going to leave a lot of bruised egos and a lot of people wanting blood in another 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. So basically not a good outlook either way.
No, I am not optimistic. And on the most in the most extreme side of things, I'm happy I no longer live in the Northeast, where probably all the nuclear missiles would first be flying. Yeah.
We got it. We'll take one for the team.
New York, DC, and Philly all just lit up. But
yeah. Well, with that being said, I'm gonna go make my plans to buy my land inward, because I'm trying to get out of here for sure. But I'm with you. I definitely don't think it's a good outlook. It's pretty depressing. It also it's wild because we're all talking about Roe versus Wade, and like I kind of thought this 2 months ago, that Russia would kind of just continue and go and go and go, and we got too tired to even focus on it. And now is when like the real bad stuff happens, because it's not on the radar of everyone, and that's when they can kind of do whatever and make things.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, and I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see.
Same here. Well, that was a great week we missed. There's a lot of bad stuff going on.
Crazy.
As always, though, love you, Todd. Love everyone. Have a good one. Talk to you soon. Peace.